So today is a special day. Today is also a hard day. My heart is both heavy and it's light. And I just wanted to share the testimony of God's goodness in my life through this day, June 1st. And I felt like I could probably do it better through talking than through writing. And to be quite honest, I have a to-do list today, and sitting down to write this probably would take a while. And I feel like it's important to share it today, on this day. So today is a hard day because it is the birthday of two very special people who are no longer in my life. 4 years ago, our family took a trip to upstate New York to adopt a baby girl who we had been awaiting the arrival for several months. Early in the morning on June 1st, we received a picture text of this beautiful baby girl who we assumed would be born with a host of birth defects, and she was born perfect. And we were expecting to get to hold her in a few hours, and a couple days later get to sign papers for her. And as soon as it was a reasonable hour, I called my dad and I said, "Hey, you have a birthday buddy." And we left, and I immediately began just dreaming of the joint birthday parties that we would someday have with my dad and our baby, whom we had named Elodie. But that was not to be. A couple days later, we would come home with an empty car seat. We went into the adoption journey not knowing a whole lot, but learned to respect the choice of the birth mother. But in this circumstance, the choice that the birth mother made was a very impulsive choice that was not for the good of our Elodie, and we were powerless in it, and it was really hard. We came home with an empty car seat, and just mourning the loss of this baby girl, and it honestly felt quite a lot like a death. And then a year and a half later, my dad would die unexpectedly. And so instead of, this day being what I expected it to be 4 years ago, it is a day of continued grief as I still mourn the loss of this baby girl who we had dreamed would be part of our family. And I imagine that here on her 4th birthday, if she was in our home, it would be a day filled with excitement and fun and celebration and all things like little girl. And if my dad was still alive, I would probably be planning a very upbeat and cheery phone conversation with him that would rest upon God's goodness in his life. And June 1st would have been this beautiful day, full of celebration and laughter and fun. But what I've come to discover over these years is that it's not that these things weren't meant to be. It's that God sovereignly planned that these things would be this way. God sovereignly planned that Elodie would be a daughter of my heart and not a daughter in my arms. And God sovereignly planned that he would take my dad unexpectedly and what seemed to be early to everybody else. But it wasn't. It was God's perfect timetable. And through both of these really hard things, I have learned that these trials aren't just about me. They are, in fact, working an eternal weight of glory in my heart and for my good and God's glory. But they aren't just about me. They are ultimately about God's plan and timetable. And it's taken, these 3 and 4 years to come to terms with the fact that my plan was not better than God's plan. And to be honest, in my humanity, I still can struggle with that. I still don't understand in my humanity why this little girl is not in what I thought would be a better home for her. And why my dad is no longer here, though he was living such a large life for Christ here on earth. It's really hard to understand how my plan wasn't better than God's plan. But I've learned so much to trust in God's perfect plan and his perfect sovereignty. And particularly with Elodie, I've learned just the ultimate trust for my children's lives. With my other children, I have some impact. I am able to speak gospel truth to them. I'm able to give them wisdom from the Bible for how they can live their lives like Christ. And I have, I seemingly have some sway over their lives. But the truth is, I really don't. I can talk until I'm blue in the face, but unless the Lord is working in their hearts to accept his truth, they won't. And so ultimately, I have to trust God's sovereignty over their hearts and their lives. And with Elodie, I, of course, have no control, no contact. Unless by some fluke, I will never meet her on this earth. And so I have to pray and trust that God's will go forward in her life. Well, it will, but I mean that she might get saved and that I might meet her in heaven. And I just have to trust in God's plan for her life. I have to trust in God's plan for future generations of children and grandchildren and, Elodie's family going forward. Maybe it's has nothing to do with me, what happens in her life. It certainly doesn't, but God is still in control of her life. That was a little bit rambly, but I hope you get the gist. And then with my dad going home to be with the Lord, I've learned so much to fill the hole in my heart with God himself. And my dad was this larger than life person, and he was extremely impactful in my life. And he was my biggest cheerleader. He just, had so much influence upon me, especially for the Lord and for following after the Lord, because he really led such a model Christian life. And now I don't have that example, and I miss him so much. And so I look to the example of Christ himself, and I strive to be that example in my children's lives and in the lives of the people around me. So it would be really easy for me today to just sit here and mourn over the fact that I can't have a birthday party for Elodie, and I can't call my dad, and that there will be no joint birthday parties, and I will forever miss these people. Like, it would be really easy to sit and do that, and to some extent, my heart will be there. I do lament the fact that these people are not part of my life, but rather I'm striving toward focusing instead on God's goodness and the way God has taught me to trust him, and ultimately just God's sovereignty over my life, Elodie's life, my dad's life. And now that my dad is in heaven and has been there for 2.5 years and will be there for eternity, and I can look forward to that myself. And so, this is not something that, these things are not trials that I'm over and totally fine about. They still really, really hurt. And I think that these particular trials I will carry with me until I too go to be with the Lord. But these are also trials that just bring me closer to the Lord. And recently in a class at church, we were talking about how important it is to lament and to grieve and to come close to the Lord in our grief. And in some strange way, I almost miss the early days of grieving over losing Elodie and grieving over losing my dad, because it was at those times that I just clung to the embrace of the Lord. And just worshiped him for his presence like I don't on the regular. And so I am rejoicing in the Lord's goodness, and I'm also clinging to him a little tighter and worshiping him for who he is and what he's done in my life. And so this was super long and hopefully not too rambly, but I hope it's an encouragement to those who are grieving, and I hope that you will join me in praying for our Elodie's life, that she would come to know the Lord and that we would meet her someday in heaven. So that's all for today. Big sigh, and now I've got to get to my to-do list. But I hope that it is a worshipful June 1st for you, and that you can also reflect on God's goodness in your own life. So that's all.